This setup is you also don't need any really specific regulator. You don't really need a high pressure regulator. Even a barbecue regulator will probably work for this. Probably wouldn't taste very good. This is the ultimate recycling. Want to see in your castings. That is a very, very hard, brittle form of cast iron. And the reason you get that is either you don't have enough silicon in your iron, or it cooled too fast, and the carbon was not able to migrate back into its correct percentage in the solution. I did this myself, but it is basically identical to the ones that have been used for centuries. I happen to have a nice big piece of hard yellow pine, and my death trap wood lathe in there. Chucked it up and away I went. It turned out pretty nice in there. I've been using that for a while. The nice thing is it has a fairly good heft to it, where you've got the peen end, it's just got a nice weight to it, where the tool does the work and your hand doesn't, but it's not so heavy that you're struggling to lift it, especially after a while if you're doing a bunch of molds. Go ahead. Alright, now we need a flask. Pardon me. For larger castings, except for the aluminum, I use those quite a bit too for smaller castings. And we have here two parts of a flask. Right? We have an upper part and a lower part. And we have locating pins so the two flasks can accurately come together. This is going to be the parting line for our casting. Parting line is very important. If you have a two-piece mold, that is where you would want to split it. Okay, what's a two-piece mold, Pastor? I'll tell you. This right here is a two-piece mold. This is my student rammer project. When I do casting classes, this is one of the first projects we do, so that the student actually, it teaches a bunch of things about metal casting. A lot of practical benefits to this, and they also walk away with a tool that they can actually use, which is the other nice thing. And what this is, you'll notice that there's a line running down through that. This is what's known as a split pattern. Okay, this is a two-piece loose pattern, and you'll notice that there's locating pins. And this one also has all kinds of draft on it, so it'll pull from the sand. Matter of fact, I usually don't have to pull the top part from the sand, it just stays right in the bottom of the other one. It comes out nice and clean. Pass that around and look at it. The flask is called the drag. The upper part is called the cope. I don't know if you've ever done any metal casting classes before or not, but those are the correct terms for it. The top half is called the cope, the bottom half is called the drag. In some castings, you'll also have flask halves that go in between these two. Doesn't matter how many there are. The top one is still a cope, bottom one is still the drag. Every single one in between is called the cheek. Okay? Don't ask me why. That's exactly what it is. That's the correct terminology for these. If you ever go to a foundry, you have to have something to do or something done, and they're telling you, this is the flask, drag, and cope, you'll understand. Okay. Alright, first order of business, we're going to decide which side we're going to cast this in. Do we want to cast it in the cope or do we want to cast it in the drag? And I think this one we're going to cast it in the drag now, so it's going to be face down when we cast it. Okay? A couple of reasons for this. Number one, there'll be more of a weight of sand on top of it. Cast iron is buoyant. If we did do the number plate today, you would see me, after we molded it all up, swore a couple of times because all the letters pulled on it, you would see me go over there and there's a couple of 25-pound weights. I would put both of those on top of the mold. Reason being is that cast iron is quite heavy and it is buoyant. It will float those two halves right up from each other and you'll have metal pouring right out the side. Anytime you have a big flat surface like that, that's what happens, especially with cast iron. So they'll either, in industry, they'll either pin or screw the flasks halves together, and they'll also still put all kinds of weights on top of them. And that is to keep it from floating up, is to keep the sand from coming up and buckling and having the casting be distorted. All right, now we need a bottom board. Because turn it over like that. This is the bottom. This is going to be the bottom of the mold. We're going to figure out where we want to place this. Rule of thumb, you want to have roughly, or used to be rule of thumb, you want to have 2 inches between your pattern and the outside of the flask. It doesn't always happen. In small foundry settings like this, you can get away with a lot more than you can in a larger foundry with a larger casting. Small casting, it doesn't really matter if you're within like a ½ inch of the, and you just got to be aware of that fact and make sure that that ½ inch is perfectly sealed against each other, or you get run out. You can't ask me how I know. All right. Now, just because of the shape of this, we're going to put it in a kind of an angle right here, because we're also going to have to compensate for this larger mass of the boss. We're going to be putting out what's known as a shrink bob in here, and a shrink bob is a type of riser. What is a riser, you ask? Well, what does metal do when it cools?
Expand.
Cools?
Oh, shrinks.
Shrinks. Shrinks, that's right. Pulls in on itself. Your gating system has to compensate for that shrinkage in your part. You want what is known as directional solidification. You want this part, these parts, to freeze first. And you want that freeze to follow back to your gate. Your gating system should be the last part of your casting to freeze. Alright? And we're going to compensate for this boss by giving it a reservoir of hot metal fairly close to it that will allow it to pull metal back from that hot reservoir into the casting as it freezes. So when the casting freezes, it is correct dimensionally. There's no shrink voids, there's no stresses set up in there, things like that. Gating is an art form, arcane art form all by itself. They have software that can predict it. The software usually runs a couple $100,000. It is not cheap. It is not cheap. Okay. We have our pattern in the sand. We have our pattern on the molding board. Now we need to add what is known as parting compound. And all that does is and I'm using a commercial parting compound now. I used to, for the last 5-6 years, I found that about the best thing that worked was pool filter medium, diatomaceous earth. However, it is silica. Silicosis is a horrible way to die. Think black lung. Okay. So I have moved on to a commercial product, and this is lung-safe parting compound. Okay. Where did I get this from? I'll think of it after you leave. But it's not Foscon. Who is it? This is going to bug me now. Anyways, it's one of the places online you can get like pattern making materials and things like that. It actually runs fairly cheap and they sell it by the pound. I bought, I think, 10 pounds and it came in that bucket, white bucket over there. and that should last me probably a year. Okay, you don't need much. And I even got a commercial bag for the parting compound too. Because I was using up to that point the field expedient sock with a hole in it. It works. Okay, works perfectly fine. Basically, you're just trying to find something that is going to distribute the powder over that. Okay?
So this isn't a sacrificial process, right? We're going to keep that pattern.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
It's just that pattern. We can make as many bell cranks as you need. If you screw the first couple we do up in the machining process, we can make more. There is now somebody making Lombard parts.
That's great.
Okay. What does a parting compound do? Parting compound basically creates a weak spot in the sand so that it can separate from each other. Because the sand, because it's nice and damp, likes to stick to each other. If we didn't put that compound in, when we lifted the top half of the mold off, most of it would stay on the bottom half. Right? Now we move on to the process. Placed our pattern, put our parting compounds on. Now you have the scoop. That is the correct foundry term for this. There are many homebrew possibilities of this too. This one is just the top cut off of a 5-gallon bucket. It's got expanded mesh on it. I like this because it kind of has a slicing motion in the sand with the expanded metal. Kind of, it seems to have a better action. I've got another one right over there. It's just made with hardware cloth, 1/4-inch hardware cloth. That works fine also. And you riddle your first layer of sand on. The biggest reason you do that is so you establish even coating of sand without big lumps and voids in it over your pattern. You get a better surface finish that way. Okay? Fill in the corners. And you don't pour the whole thing full at once. At least not in this situation. In industry, yeah, they do, because they have the correct equipment to do it. Their sand is conditioned to the point where all they got to do is go flump. The machine come in, drops it, and it's called a jolt squeeze. It drops it. The sand, because of its own weight, packs itself around the pattern, and then they squeeze them together. That is machinery I can neither afford nor have room for. Or the high-powered air compressor you need running with the damn things. It would be cool to have one. Speed up production big time. Take your rammer. Again, this is just the techniques I've developed. I go in a spiral pattern. You do the outside first. You come back in. You go from the outside in. And I found that kind of locks your pattern in place and it doesn't shift from where you had it in there. We get our first layer. Scratch it up a little bit. Make sure that the layers adhere. You don't really have to do this on the drag, but it's not a bad practice. Gravity will hold the halves together, drag. The layers together, I should say. I'll show you how to do this on the first one. One of you gentlemen can be the guinea pig on the next one. So you guys can say that you made one of the Lombard parts. Wow. This is also a really good way to take your frustrations away. All right, now you need to strike it off. And that is the correct term, is striking it off. And you can either call this a striker or a screed or whatever you want to call it. You can see see how much I've used this piece of maple. You want to use a slicing motion, because if you just push, it tends to pull the sand out from there. Right now that we've taken it out, we'll put some back on. The reason being is that we're now going to take and rub in our bottom board. Putting some back on, it just gives you a nice even spurt, and it's completely supported on here. Okay, it's going to even out the support when we put the cope on here and ram it up. The drag shouldn't shift. Now we roll it over. Again, that's the correct term. Rolling it over. That's literally what you want to do. You don't want it, if you can avoid picking it up. Avoid picking it up. We have. This is not the smoothest bottom board in the world. Get pictures. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to clean up our parting line a little bit. You notice it's kind of sunk in a little bit. There's crap on top of that. We want to make sure that we clean this up so that our parting line matches the edge of the pattern. That when we go to pull it, it's not going to break off the edges of that and have bumps.
They actually do all of it in watermill?
As far as I know.
Yeah.
Alright. Now the only other thing we're going to add right now is we're going to add our sprue pin. This is our sprue pin. The sprue is where you pour the metal into. Okay. Like that. Bottom, take our top half, and you'll notice that I have alignment marks. I have some spray paint right here, some spray paint right here. It's embarrassing if you reverse the coat. Either you sit there and you pour and you're like, wow, that poured off way faster, filled up way faster than it should. All you really are casting is a sprue pin because it doesn't lead to nothing. Or you have a mold that is really weird because it's offset. Yes, I've done that. Recently. Okay. Now, once again, yeah, it's a party compound. This stuff you don't need much. This is actually pretty efficient. With the diatomaceous earth that I was using, I would have had to have added a lot more. This stuff is actually pretty good stuff. I'm impressed with the importance. Lovely fall cold that doesn't want to seem to come on all the way. Last 3 weeks, driving me nuts. Where this is the cope, we want to make sure that the layers adhere well.
because of the buoyancy of the
No, it's because when you pick the top half up, if it goes, again, there's much swearing involved. It's annoying. Generally speaking, you can't just go back and redo the coat. You have to dump the drag too, because when scraping the sand off of the drag, you screw up the parting line. Again, there's much swearing involved. Usually it means that you didn't ram it hard. I've gotten to the point where I've learned how hard to ram it. You ram it until it starts feeling resilient. That's the best way I can describe it. Until you start getting resistance back to your pounding, that's about as hard as you want to pound it.
Is it possible to make it too hard?
Yes. And that actually causes surface quality problems on your finished casting. And if your casting is fragile enough, it will distort it. Or if your pattern is fragile enough, it will distort it, shift it out of position, break it. Now, one of the easiest ways to make a pattern for metal casting is what's known as lost foam. You just basically take pink or blue polystyrene or styrofoam, just regular old house insulation, and you carve your pattern out of that. However, that is a sacrificial process. That you don't get 2 shots at it. If your casting doesn't come out the first time, you're pooched.
Are there any imperfections from the polystyrene, or does it just evaporate out perfectly?
Yes, it can be. It's a rougher casting.
Yeah.
If you needed a rapid prototype, or if you needed a big chunky part, it's probably better to use it for that than it would be if you were looking to make like a production casting. At least in the backyard sphere of things. There are ways to compensate for that. Weird and odd things. I don't know what half of these do. Okay. I can guess, but I don't use them on a daily basis. But you can get a modern kit with all that, with the lifters in it, and the whole 9 yards, for about 120 bucks. Okay? 10 cents. Use restaurant supply, please. Sometimes cheap is good. Making what's known as a pouring cup. Industry and a larger casting, this is actually a fairly high-tech design, and it allows them to pour and have the metal transition smoothly into the sprue hole with the least amount of draws. Here it's just so I don't miss the damn hole. These castings are too small to really bother with something like that. Necessarily, your gating system should catch the rest of it, whatever crud you've got coming out. Okay, you notice I'm rotating the pin before I pull it out. This is so that my sprue is kind of conical shape. You can either make one of these on a wood lathe so that it's conical, or you can just get a piece of dowel like I have here, and just rotate it around until you have that conical shape. What that does is when you're filling this up, as long as you keep that sprue full, if your pouring rate is correct, it will be a smoother transition of the metal into the mold. Reduce turbulence, it will reduce entrained air, so you don't have bubbles. Okay? Which can be a dangerous thing, not necessarily to the casting itself, the part itself, but if you get a bubble in the wrong place, especially in a complicated gating system, it will shut that part of the gate off, and you'll have a partial casting, or you'll have feed problems. Lift it off. As possible. Pardon me for just a second, gentlemen. I gotta go get a drill. Drop ins. Very nice. Things we're going to do before we get too far here. So we're going to cut part of our gating system. The reason is that if you cut it now, you don't have crap falling into the cavity. What we're going to do is we're going to cut our in-gate bottom. The bottom of our shrink bob, okay? We're going to want it fairly close to the section. Some castings, especially in industry, the gating system may very well outweigh the casting itself, depending on the complexity. We want a nice big in-gate on this one. Also want the bottom of the sprue, you want a little well. What this does is, again, this cuts down on the turbulence. So you don't have a sharp corner that metal has to turn. Sand or other crap is washed in here, it's going to get washed past that, and it's going to backfill to the casting itself. This will keep the casting cleaner. It will act as a trap. The reason we do that is to enlarge the cavity just a little bit to make it easier to pull it better. This is where you need steady hand. Bit of a pull right there. Fix. Easy peasy. But that turned out pretty clean, actually. The only other thing we want to do is we want to make sure we touch up our in-gate. This will allow any trapped air to escape. Water vapor to escape. Ends of our arms here. And if you get a little bit like that, don't worry about it. That means you pulled a little bit crookedly or sand stuck to the that's okay because the take it off tools usually work better than put it back on again. Shrink bob, okay? And this is going to be a shrink bob is a riser, okay? A riser is a technical term for any part that feeds metal back into the casting as it's cooling. Right? The riser can either be on the casting itself, or it can be what we're doing here. It can be a hot riser, which means it's on the in-gate side of the casting, or it can be a cold riser, which would mean it would be down here towards one of the arms of the casting. It would be past the casting. Alright? A shrink bob is a particular type of riser where it's known as a hidden riser or a blind riser, because it is not going to poke out the surface of the casting or of the mold. Alright? It is just going to be a blob of metal, fairly good sized one, to help feed the casting back. Shrink bob the other size
always learn new casting.
Ooh.
They got all our PPE on.
Well, you can smell it, can't you? Let's see what it's doing. That's unreal. Very nice. Wow.
Well, We didn't pour the number plaque. I wasn't sure if we were gonna have enough iron to do that or not anyway, so.
Dory was on my butt all morning about the night before Christmas seat covers. And I got mad at her and I said, you need to back off because I'm not gonna give you something for Christmas, Dory. Now you're getting.
It's heavier. Prayer, oh Lord, please let this damn thing come out. Da, da. It's a good sign right there, actually.
Wow, that is hot stuff. You can smell like acid.
Yeah, I think it's still hot. What do you guys think?
Oh, yeah, it's a little red right there.
The sand's hot too.
Oh yeah, there's still a little red chipping off.
George, I think we got it. Ta-da!
Pretty amazing, huh? Wow.
Look at that.